Thank you for being here today. I'm joined by Chief Kozel of the City of Muskegon Police Department, Heather Bloomquist, who will be the Assistant Prosecutor assigned to these cases moving forward from today. And officially announcing that my office has filed charges against the two individuals that we believe are responsible for the heinous act that happened on Jackson Hill here in the city of Muskegon. One of those individuals being DeJuan Robinson and the other being Taven Irvin. Both have Detroit addresses and both have been in the custody of the Michigan Department of Corrections since this incident happened, and certainly I believe it was Mr. Irvin was the individual who was arrested in the Detroit area with the help of the fugitive team and the Detroit area law enforcement. Both are still remain in custody with the Michigan Department of Corrections. We are working towards an agreement with the MDOC as it relates to an arraignment date. That has not yet been determined, and so once we have that, we will be making that known so that I'm sure you all want to attend that. Obviously, we plan on attending. I did have the opportunity this morning to meet with both sets of family members who lost loved ones in this incident and had an opportunity to talk about what we had done as far as charges were concerned and answered any questions moving forward preliminarily. So the family has been informed as to what's happening today, and now it was appropriate to let the public know that thanks to the great efforts, the valiant efforts, I would say, of local law enforcement, Muskegon Police Department, the chief's crew, putting together a really top-notch investigation, got to us to this point today where we were able to issue these charges. Certainly the top counts are the murder charges, and then ultimately we also issued charges based on the other victims who were present at the house, including the two minor children. And you can see that they've been charged also with felony farm. The felony farm count is attached to every single one of these counts. By law, we have to do that. That's why this is a 16-count complaint. But ultimately, our goal moving forward will be to make sure that neither one of these individuals see the light of day again.
16 counts, what you said, that's very, very extensive. I mean, usually, you're seeing 1, 2, 3, but 16 is a lot.
Well, as you all know, and I think as our community knows, this was a pretty horrific and tragic event. There were a lot of people inside the house at the time. There was a lot going on, and so we felt it appropriate that we account for, or we hold these two individuals accountable for all those actions. Now, certainly they're both presumed innocent until proven guilty, and we understand as the prosecution team that we have the burden of proving this case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I have all the confidence in the world that at the end of this, we will bring some sense of justice and accountability to the two families that lost loved ones during this event.
You mentioned Irvin was arrested in the Detroit area. Can you get into a little more details as to what went into that effort and when that happened?
Yeah, so certainly after the event, we were aware that we had one of the suspects who had been injured, critically wounded during the course of the events that took place at this location. But we also were aware of the fact that one of the individuals who we suspected was involved had fled the scene. And again, not getting into investigative tactics and the things that investigators did, there was extensive work done by local law enforcement here in Muskegon, as well as working in conjunction with law enforcement on the east side of the state. And ultimately, we were able to pinpoint Mr. Irvin's location and able to arrest him shortly after the press conference I think you had, Chief, that he was placed into custody. Or it was right around that time, if I'm not mistaken. So ultimately, once we had him in custody, we were pretty confident that we had everybody who was involved in this particular incident.
Are you able to speak to motive at all?
I can't really talk about motive. Certainly I think all that will sort of flesh itself out as we move forward in this process. And ultimately, I think you'll be able to discern a little bit of what our theories are based on the charging decisions we've made. And again, once we get witnesses' testimony, we're able to kind of put stuff on the record publicly, hopefully it'll start to surface.
So I see that they're charged with open murder, and then in the alternative, homicide felony murder. Why is that?
Well, open murder gives us the option of all the various degrees, first degree, second degree manslaughter, and that's a charge that we typically will charge in these particular cases. In this particular instance, we really wanted to make it known that, you know, our theory, our true theory is that this is a first degree murder case. And that's sort of the mindset we have moving forward, that this is a first degree murder case. And ultimately, when we talk about felony murder, it brings in, as you can see, the armed robbery. And so, again, sort of the, I guess the direction that we're headed is that this is how we feel this case should have been charged.
And like you said, you guys don't want them to see the light of day again.
Yeah, ultimately, again, this was a very horrific, tragic event, not only for those involved, but for this community. And it's important that law enforcement and the prosecutor's office continue to work together hand in hand to send a strong message that don't come to our community and commit these types of crimes, because you will be charged very aggressively and you're going to essentially be putting yourselves in this position.
Both these guys, as far as I understand, were on parole for previous, also equally heinous offenses, if you really look into it. Do you have an opinion on them making parole? It was a 5 to 20, and I think they served 7-ish. Is that disappointing to your office to have them then suddenly in your community? What's your comments on their parole status?
Well, I mean, I certainly am not going to nitpick too much what the parole board does. I mean, they have a tough job to do, and certainly they work under various parameters and boundaries, and you know, ultimately, as you indicated, if they served beyond their minimum sentence, that means that they were denied parole at least once or twice before they got released. And so ultimately, it's unfortunate that you know, they were released. All I can say is they weren't released to Muskegon, and they just happened to make their way over here, which is unfortunate. But at the end of the day, you know, the Michigan Department of Corrections did us a favor by putting these guys back into custody, allowing us to do what we need to do as far as the investigation was concerned in order to get to where we are today.
Both of these individuals, along with D'Angelo Aubrey in another case, he also was on parole at this time. You and Matt Roberts both said something very similar in that case, which was your goal is to make sure he never sees the light of day again. That's something we've heard a couple times now within the last month just in Muskegon. So what can you say to viewers, neighbors in Muskegon now as we're hearing of another case with 16 counts here?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, unfortunately, people make really bad choices and bad decisions. And I wish I had a magic wand where I could predict when these things were going to happen. I don't have that power. What I do have the power to do is making sure that we send a message not only to those who are being held accountable in the cases that you're mentioning, but those that might think about trying to do something similar, that just not here in Muskegon, because this is what's going to happen. And again, I point to a lot of the things that we've been doing behind the scenes with grassroots organizations and other programs that my office and law enforcement have to try to curb people's wanting to commit violent acts. But at the end of the day, if somebody wants to do that, they're going to do it.
What was the relationship between them and the victims in this case? Is there anything you can share on that?
My understanding is they knew each other through connections, through prior, I think, involvement in the criminal justice system. That was where the connection was. I think, as we indicated at the outset, this wasn't necessarily a random act, that these individuals knew each other. And it's my understanding that it was through other incidents in the criminal justice system that had brought them together at some point in time.
And what about the relationship, the pair of them?
The pair, I can't speak to that. I don't know what their relationship is.
I know you kind of touched on it in previous answers, but like you said, you know, these two individuals are from the other side of the state. They're not from Muskegon. What message do you want to send to people who are coming from outside of this community, wanting to commit, you know, almost senseless acts of violence to people in the community?
Well, certainly, I invite anybody to come visit Muskegon County who's here to live, work, or play. But if you're coming here to commit crime, pick another community, because ultimately I have full faith and trust in law enforcement here in Muskegon County that they'll do a top-notch job investigating the case, and ultimately we are going to be extremely aggressive when it comes to charging decisions being made. What we want to do is create this environment that people want to be here because they're doing it for the right reasons.
And then one of my final questions that I have is, there's some people who have been questioning, it's been over a month, right, since this shooting happened, and it's just now these two men are being charged. What do you want to say to those people who are like, why is this taking so long?
Well, again, we were afforded extra time to make sure that we got the investigation the way we wanted it before we made the charging decisions, based on the fact that the Michigan Department of Corrections basically took these guys and put them in holds. They were never going to walk the streets during that time frame. And again, given that time, we were able to really shore up a couple of things in the investigation that needed to be shored up before we made charging decisions. But as I told the families this morning, this was never not going to be charged. It was always going to be charged. We were just given that opportunity to take a little bit more time to do it.
Is there any perspective you can share from the families? Were they relieved that this happened? Is it kind of any sort of closure? What are their thoughts as this continues?
Well, as you can well imagine, both sets still grieving, and understandably, this action today does not bring closure to any of that. What I told them this morning is that we are working towards making sure those responsible are held accountable to what they did. But it's not going to bring their loved one back, and it's certainly not going to fill that gap or that hole in their hearts that they have. But ultimately, our job is to make sure we hold them accountable to the highest extent possible.
Is there any update on the other victims they were treated and released since, but any update on the 4-year-old and the other 25-year-old?
I don't have any medical updates as far as they're concerned. No, I don't.
Kind of piggybacking off of the family question, I spoke with one of the moms who, something she said to me was, I have to plan a funeral for my kid, and no one should ever have to plan a funeral for their child. Obviously, an incredibly heartbreaking statement to make, especially on a public platform. Getting to speak with them this morning, is there anything you can share in addition about your goal moving forward to not only represent this community, but to represent these moms and these family members?
Well, I'm going to keep most of what I talked to them about private.
Yeah,
It was a private conversation between me and them. But ultimately, again, I go back to what my original comment was, is that our job, our role right now is to make sure that we do everything in our power to hold these two men accountable for what happened. And that's what we're going to do. And as you can see from the charging decisions that have been made in this case, we're being extremely aggressive on that route. And ultimately, for me and for my team, it is all about making sure that we present a case in an open courtroom that's fair, that's reasonable. But ultimately, we're going to be asking that the jury find these two men guilty of first-degree murder. All good?